Hello, my fellow extraordinary Americans. My name is Cosmos Dar, and this is Extraordinary America. What is Extraordinary America? Well, you see, America has always been about freedom, opportunity, and the pursuit of happiness. However, most Americans are not free when it comes to the financial front. Most Americans are suffering from financial slavery due to loss of jobs, stagnant wages, inflation, and debt. Wealth and income inequality is the norm now, and the middle class has all but disappeared. So Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. It is about the nation of immigrants and the descendant of immigrants restoring the extraordinary within themselves and setting themselves free. The path to financial freedom is through financial education. It is through becoming entrepreneurs and investors on the light side. In this podcast, I interview fellow Americans who fought against the odds. Many of them came from humble beginnings to see how they did it. It is my hope through these interviews that the extraordinary within you shall awaken and that you will abolish financial slavery from your life and realize the American dream. Once again, welcome to Extraordinary America. Welcome back to the show, my fellow extraordinary Americans. For today's guest, we have Tamara Vander Lugt. Tamara is an entrepreneur and philanthropist with over 2 decades of experience in operational logistics, project management, marketing, and startup companies. Tamara specializes in the development and execution of domestic and global startup companies. She has a vast experience in a variety of sectors such as construction, food and beverage, alternative energy, transportation, aviation, finance, and hard assets. Currently, she's implementing her father's dying wish, completing the global humanitarian project he had been working on since the mid 2000s, all with the goal of helping others and being a positive light in the world. Phase one starts with a global transportation company called JAG Global Transport Inc., which would move high value hard assets for clients globally. Utilizing former combat veterans as security personnel creates the highest rate of success and aids with reducing veteran suicide rates. Phase two is the development of an avionics school centered on humanitarian aid using industry disruptive technology. And phase three revolves around affordable housing paired with full circle sustainable farming methods. Tamara is what I would call an extraordinary American, and I'm definitely glad to have her on this show. Tamara, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Cosmos.
Tamara, thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast with us. I'm honored to have you on the show. So, we know that you're like an entrepreneur and a philanthropist. Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Sure. I started at a very young age, aiding my dad at about age 13. We were farmers in California, and my dad loved airplanes and came home one day and said, I think I want to start an airline. And 2 years later, he did from the ground up, from scratch, just a country boy farmer. And he started an amazing passenger airline that ran for a year in Fresno, California, called Air 21. And it was great because his objective was to create jobs and help the community. And he got the founding fathers involved. But in the process, he had me editing his business plans at a very young age because what I didn't realize he was doing was grooming me. And he also wanted to include me because we were very much alike. So that fed that fuel of that entrepreneurial spirit growing up. So when I graduated from college, the first job I ever had was working for an entrepreneur who had 5 companies, and I ran all 5 for him. And that was a
Wow.
hook, line, sinker. I loved it. And they were in such diverse industries, from finance to personal investigations to aviation to car sales. It was a lot of fun, amazing experience. And that led to more entrepreneurs that I started to work for, people in land development, immigrants who came from the Middle East, and running companies for them in a number of sectors. So it just kind of transpired from there. But I always knew that I wanted to create businesses, help people, and do that. So when my dad got involved with a lot of, let's just say, other like-minded individuals, he started to have me involved on the marketing side because that's the majority of my background in my MBA. because I love human nature. I like to understand what makes people tick, why people make choices, and understanding the root cause of actual aspects, because I think that you can't solve problems unless you understand the root cause. So it just, yeah, so that got me into project management and a lot of business development, and started doing some consulting on the side. And I loved it so much. I still love it.
Wow, Tamara, this is amazing. Like you started doing entrepreneurship from a really small age, and at one point you were actually trying to run like 5 companies at a go, right? So my question to you is, what was over the years that you've done business and you've run companies, what was your overall arching vision and goal, and how did it change over a period of time?
At first, my objective was just to get experience, because being a female in the work environment is a challenge within itself, especially from demographic regions. Every demographic has a different challenge. So I knew that I wanted to be under smart people who would give me an opportunity and see what I could offer, and just give me that knowledge that I was craving. And that made me really realize how important having the right mentor and lots of mentors throughout your life are imperative.
No, Tamara, like I agree with you. Like mentorship is one of the most important factors that you need in like while doing like in when it comes to financial education and business. I think a lot of people want to start businesses and be entrepreneurs, but they never really had the right on mentorship or what you would call like the right financial education, like which is what this podcast is about. Like, we have to create the right like mindsets, right thoughts, and all of that stuff. So Tara, one question I had was, what was like the motivating factor that drove you towards entrepreneurship? Because it's a really hard thing to do. But like I know your father was a presence, but like other than that, what drives you towards entrepreneurship and business?
I love the creation of bringing something from nothing, just that creative aspect of ideas and how it can help industries, communities, and people involved in it. I love that. I love the creativity part.
I mean, yeah, like entrepreneurship, like some people would say like some people think of business as corporate America where there's hardly like any creativity. And then on the other hand, you have entrepreneurship where you have to create products and services, but it's also like a lot of risk while doing so, right? So like when do you, I'm sure at some point you had the fear of failure and like of like basically what if the companies are like not going to work out, or the financial things. So like what is your mindset on how to overcome this intrinsic fear of failure that most people have when they want to start their business?
Well, I think the fear of failure, if you don't have that fear, then you need a reality check. Because I think that's human nature to have a certain amount of fear. But also, fear is inevitable. Um, Fear needs to happen so that way you can understand things from different perspectives. And failure, I think, is also very important to encounter, because you learn more lessons through failure than success, I think. If success doesn't come with any type of hardship, I think people take it for granted. And it's very easy to have that philosophy of, well, the gambler's philosophy. If it keeps happening, it's going to continue to happen. That's not always true. Something my dad always told me my entire life, because we dealt with a lot of hardships and a lot of things we've lost because we took a lot of risk. And he always told me, never give up. That was what he told me through college, through struggling through courses, through business, through everything. He was always that person I would go to. And no matter what I was struggling with, he said, never give up. He's like, it's okay to get down for a moment because that's normal. He said, but never stay down. Always make sure you're surrounding yourself with those positive people to build you back up.
No, I mean, I guess like the last part which you talked about is about having positive people around you. Like I feel like a lot of people have like the wrong group of people around them, and then they inevitably bring them down. So
Yeah.
I do think about the last part, like that actually helps with overcoming fear of failure, because a lot of people give negative energy and they try to bring you down and they say you
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah, because it's human nature to absorb what you're around. I mean, you are what you hang around. You're the sum of three people that you spend the most time with. So that's something to really consider is, are those people building you up, keeping you mundane, or bring you down because they need that, because they feel insecure. So I think you always want to be the dumbest person in the room. You always want to be the least successful person in the room because you're always going to be thriving if you're around people that do more than you, because you're going to want to run with that same crowd.
No, totally. Like that is definitely true. And speaking of like human nature, right? I mean, it's one of the like I've studied human nature for like a number of years, and over a period of time, I came to a bunch of realizations. But like when it comes to that and business, right? What was one of the over the years? What was one of the biggest lessons you came to realize regarding the interconnection between human nature and entrepreneurship and business in general?
Always trust your gut. It is right 100% of the time if you actually listen to it.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? Because a lot of people would say you have to be rational and logical and trusting your gut.
Those have nothing to do with human emotions. Those are all, you have your tier one and your tier two thinking, which is, uh, your logic side and your emotional side. You have to listen to the emotional side within reason to the logic, because again, you can't be 100% one or the other. You have to have a balance between the two. But if you're really in tune with understanding and reading people, then and you can feel when people have nefarious intention, or their purpose is something other that's not aligned with yours. It's something that I don't know if it can be taught, maybe coached. I think more people, I think some people have it more as a gift than others. Some people can work on it, but it's I think it's closer to the level of what people would call a conscience. How are you with your moral compass, your conscious, what feels right, what doesn't right? It's like when an animal approaches a human. Animals know instinctively they like someone or they don't. I trust animals' intuition over anything. And that's the same level that humans need to have is, what is your first reaction with someone? Why do you just innately like them all of a sudden? But why? Then you have to question. If there's something telling you there's something you don't like about them, but you can't pinpoint, you probably need to dig into that. And you should always give people an opportunity, I believe, but always be cautious, knowing that there's something telling you to be cautious. That's kind of what I mean as far as just having that gut instinct. And not everybody has ever experienced it, but I think a lot of people have.
No, I mean, I like the fact that you're talking about like, you meet somebody and then you like they're really charming or something, but like there's something off about them, but you can't pinpoint what that is. We probably don't know how many people probably went through that where they could not pinpoint it, but then later on they realize this person's trouble, and then they just had that instinct, but they could not figure out how it is, you know?
And usually it's too late and you're hurt in the process when you find out and you're like, oh, that is why I didn't trust them, but I just didn't realize that was the reason.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I remember like back when I just had got out of college, and there was this one person like that eventually ended up like conning me, and then literally like punched me in my face and then broke my nose and all of that in Chicago. But it's like another it's like I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but like in the beginning, like he was really charismatic, and then like we had this business plan, and I did all this work with him, right? But then he would like sell me on these big dreams and all that stuff, and I just like fell for it. But my gut was telling me something is off, like it's not right. But then like my logic would say no, that's like, I mean, like look at the math, like the business plan, like it seems to be working. And then we eventually went on a drive from like Texas all the way to Chicago, and I don't know why I did. I was probably young and dumb and naive and stupid and all of that. But then yeah, he eventually ended up like screwing me over, and then not just that, like giving me a broken nose as well. And I survived that ordeal, obviously, and then I had to drive all the way back. But it made me. But I realized that there's a lot of good came out of that eventually, because ultimately I started researching narcissistic personality disorder, and like what is antisocial personality disorder, like how do sociopaths think, and psychopaths, and like what is their mentality and strategy. And I learned a lot about human nature. Like I figured out that there's actually like there's a subgroup of people out there in this world, like they don't have the capacity to have a conscience,
Yeah.
but they're really charismatic on the outside, and like they lure you in, but they literally don't have a conscience. And
Because it's
people
about control.
and like people cannot imagine, because most people, right, most of humanity, like we at some level we have some level of conscience on the other, so it's hard for us to imagine that there are people out there that don't
Yeah.
have it, and how do they think, and what is it. And like you realize that to them the world is a game, and like it's
Hmm.
all about winning and losing and all of that stuff. And so it was an interesting experience, right? Like even in like the toughest times, like you get something good out of it. You learn and you grow, and then you learn a lot about people that you otherwise would not learn. So
Yeah. And I think sociopaths, it also has a lot to do with acquisitions, because as a female in the business world, a lot of the positions I was hired for, I found out later, was not for my background and experience. And I found out the hard way. And when you go to people for help, when you are in situations, they don't always believe you. Now, granted, things have changed in the past 20 years, and we're talking about, a long time ago, but things like that scar women, and it happens to men too. But I think especially in a certain time frame, it did happen to a lot of females, and they never spoke up because it was just pushed under the rug for a very, very long time.
man,
So
so like one of the questions I had to you, like as a female in like who's been as a woman that has been in a male dominated field, like that's been doing business in a male dominated field, what are some of like the challenges that you had to like in general that you had to go through, like from a female's perspective in these fields?
trying to balance femininity with strength, because you're dealing with a lot of egos sometimes. And having a powerful, strong willed female is often very intimidating for males who are insecure but don't show it. So there can be a lot of conflict, a lot of backlash, things like that. And some of it is sexism too, because again, if you fit a certain classification of what they like, then they're going to treat you a certain way. And it all depends on how the people in those industries view males and females. If a male doesn't respect women, he's not going to respect any female. It doesn't matter what role they have, how educated they are, where they came from. They're going to be a sexist no matter what. How to combat that, I think, is learning the essence of grace and patience. Because no matter how, the more you react, the more you're going to get a negative reaction. It's not going to move the needle forward. It's not going to help you in your career. I think the more you set your boundaries gracefully, and the more you communicate uncomfortableness within a very plain, even tone keel. Because again, if you create emotions high or low, it's going to affect the business world negatively. So I think it's a very fine line that you have to learn, and it's an art. It takes time to perfect. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you have to figure out where that balance is to communicate what you're uncomfortable with and what your needs are, but then also demanding respect that you deserve.
So Tamara, like it's one thing that I would want to ask is like, let's say like you have like a female entrepreneur who's like in their late teens, early 20s, and they want to like follow like your path, or like doing like multiple companies and like going to businesses and also going into a male dominated field. How would you what would you advise, and like how would you coach this person if they're like starting off, and like and what like advice would you give this person?
Be bold, and don't feel like you have to agree and say yes, and don't apologize. Because if you've done your research and you have data to back information up, don't compromise, stand your ground, because not everyone's going to do that. And I think it's very important to have a strong educational background, understanding your industry inside and out. So that way you can come very logically to meetings and conversations, whether it's, you know, just a regular meeting or trying to make a change in an organization. I Yeah, there's a lot of things that a young girl would do, and also how you present yourself and carry yourself with strength. You know, don't try to be that young sexy girl in the office. It's okay to have a hybrid of the two, but again, we do not want physical attributes to be the selling point to get what we want. I think that is going to set a negative tone for females. I mean, females are females, so we are all built differently. But I think if you're trying to emphasize the wrong attributes that you have, it's going to come back very negatively later in life. So own your intellect, own your skill set, and focus on those things alone.
That is awesome. I'm glad that you like you're actually mentioning that, because I think like only in the like the past century, the 20th century, and now the 21st century, like women are now coming full on into the workforce, and there's like kind of like they're trying to figure out how to do this balance that you're talking about. And I mean, from my perspective, it seems like a really hard balance altogether, you know, like
Yep.
having a femininity and also being like in, if you're in a male dominant field, like having data and all, and like being logical and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. And say a lot of women before me dealt with a lot more as well. So you try to learn from previous generations. And that's something I would highly advise young entrepreneurs to do is talk to people 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years older than you and ask them what they did right, what they did wrong, and what they would do different.
Awesome. So on a different note, Tamara, I wanted to ask you about in this question. Like I know, like like they say that America is the land of the free and the place where dreams are made. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I do agree that this is a place for opportunity and dreams. I've known a number of first and second and third generation immigrants, some successful, some mildly, and some not so. Um, so yeah, I think this is a place for opportunity if you take advantage of it and if you get involved in the right arenas. And education isn't always a thing from a formal aspect. Not everybody has to go to college to find success, I don't believe. But I normally I would say it's the circumstances that you're put into and the environment you're around that will dictate your success or not. However, I have met two individuals, one more recently, that kind of shook that theory for me. And I think it has very little to do with your circumstances. I think it has much more to do with the personality of the individual and their motivating factors. The most recent person I met, early 50s, first generation immigrant from Ireland, success beyond what we could believe, had the worst upbringing, awful, awful. But that motivated him to push harder. And a lot of people, when I grew up in California, dealt with a lot of that poverty and jumping from household to household, not having parents involved in their lives, not having that love and security that you need as a child. A lot of them did not reach large amounts of success of what society would deem successful. But this particular individual used it as the catalyst to go into elite athleticism, let's just say, and then go into finance and to win at everything and to always have success upon success because it was that driving motivating factor of all those things that hurt him young that he said, I'm never going to do that again.
No, I mean, I've actually interviewed quite a few people that they've had like a horrendous childhood, or like they've had some of like toughest circumstances out there, like when they were young. And but like instead of like getting down by them, they used it as fuel and fire to like basically go in the opposite direction. And so like, yeah, I mean, that's something that the audience knows, that even if like you're going through the hardest circumstances out there, it's our perspective and how we respond to those circumstances that are going to dictate whether what we're going to do, you know, and whether we're going to have a positive outcome in our life or not. So yeah, for sure. So I had a question, Tamara. So, like, what do you think is the biggest hurdle that Americans face right now when it comes to realizing the American dream, and how would they overcome this, according to you?
I think it's where people are getting their information from. I think a lot of people have a lot of dreams and a lot of ambition. Um, Partially, it's not knowing where to find the right resources. Part of it is, I mean, in a sense, almost depression, because people talk themselves out of things because of fear of success or fear of failure or fear of trying. I think that's where a lot of Americans are at, that they are scared to make that step to lose whatever security they have or whatever they've created. And you know, it's also comfort zones too. If you are going to be a true entrepreneur, you live outside your comfort zone 24/7.
I mean, that's easier said than done, right? Like we all want to go outside our comfort zone, but when it actually comes to actions of like going there, I mean, it's I mean, we can have like all the financial education in the world, but if we're not going to go take the actions, then yeah, it's pretty difficult to put the education into effect, you know?
Education means nothing without action. So it's, you can plan, prepare all you want, but until you take that first step, and you might fail on the first 5 or 10 steps, but you're at least moving forward and you're not stagnant.
No, totally. So, Tamara, I know like before this, like when I've met you before, like we talked about precious metals and hard assets and all of that stuff, right? Because now, like, you know, right now there's been inflation going on and it's only going to get worse eventually, right? I'm pretty sure the fiat currency is going to go, it's not going to be there for much longer. But from your perspective, how should people handle like what is your perspective on inflation and debt, and what should people do to combat this?
If you do have debt, focus on your high interest rates first. Get those down immediately, because with interest rates rising, that's just going to manifest and you're never going to get out under that rock. I would also say be strategic with your investments. What does the industry look like that you want to get into? But for the average American, I would say probably most of them don't have traditional investments. I would say, other than maybe an additional property or two, or maybe some stock market options. Um, I think this is the time to understand economics, read industries, and if you're going to invest or reallocate investments, focus on industry specific ones, because there's always sectors that are going to boom when others completely fail, and vice versa. It's the laws. So I think this is the best time to educate yourself on global economics.
Yeah, I mean, so like a lot of people probably want to be like educated, but like they don't really know like which area, like places to go to find like such education. And do you have any recommendations for like
Honestly,
where?
I wouldn't say a very specific place, because I think you need to find 20 sources. And
Mhm.
then for your ideas, perspectives, you need to find a common ground with what makes sense to you. That's how I do my research. So you are less likely to find biased information. If you only focus on one or two industries, we don't know which way they actually lean or what their motivation is or what their agenda is. If you're looking at things at a global level and 20, 30 different sources, what are the common aspects between all those sources? That is a truth right there, if everyone's saying the same thing. All the other things is what you need to judge, gauge, and research. I don't think enough people do actual research from unbiased sources, and they just take news articles at face value, or they only read the titles or the first paragraph. Start reading more. read everything and read as much as you can all day long. That is going to be the best way to understand and watch markets as they move.
I mean, like right now, basically for like the first time in human history, all of the nations have fiat currencies, which is crazy, right? Like because many of them were linked to the American dollar, which itself stopped being backed by gold in 1971. So like
Yeah.
now everything it's to me personally, it's like a disaster in waiting. But yeah, I personally am doing research on like precious metals and like gold, silver, like maybe the right cryptocurrencies and just like
Mhm.
real estate investing education because I know like these are like assets that are going to be more stable like when things go south, you know? But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting because the whole aspect of currency and value of currency is based on the people's belief in it. We put our belief in a cash dollar over anything else because we have a tangible asset we can hold on to. However, it's not actually an asset if it's not backed by anything. And it literally says on there, I owe you. So you are holding a promissory note when you have cash. But when you're talking hard assets, people are always going to go back to historical known values of what they trust and know because we are creatures of habit and we don't like change. So if a new thing fails and crashes, we're going to revert and divert back to what's known and tangible, which
I
are
mean that
what?
gold.
Basic hard asset, gold, silvers, monetary aspects of what used to be the main currency of trade. And then before that, it was what?
Um
It was barter. It was barter. What can I do for you? What can you give to me? And are your apples as good as my manure? you know uh
Probably not, but
well, I mean, it depends on who the buyer is.
no, I mean like that's why it became that's why they started using like a system like gold, right? Because they knew
Yep.
the barter system was inefficient because nobody could come to an agreement of what was considered valuable. And then
Fair value. It was a sustainable aspect that they could create a level area for a very long time, and they did because it never changed in value or assumption. It was a guaranteed amount.
yeah, and then like gold was also scarce and you had to have like a scarce kind of thing. But then now we have fiat money where it's just getting printed and printed. Like whenever there's a problem, you just print it, like yeah,
No,
so
that's no. Yeah, that is the concerning part is, even though there is a certain amount of printing happening right now, the residual effect, it's not going to impact us as much right now as it is 5, 10, 15 years from now. um, that is when it's really going to hurt the global economy as a whole, honestly. And again, depending on what happens with presidential elections, global finance aspects and what the World Bank wants to do, it will either elongate it or it'll happen a lot sooner.
so Tamara, like like in America in the last so many years, there's been like a deterioration in not just like the financial sector, but also like in government and also the family as well. Where do you think America is headed, and should we be optimistic for the future or not?
Me personally, I'm always going to lean toward optimism because I think if we automatically say it's a doomsdayer, then everyone's going to believe it. And, it's the sheep effect. I think there always needs to be optimism, regardless how much negative things are out there that might be pointing a certain direction. And I think that optimism is going to be the only thing keeping us from very quickly going into a negative downward spiral. So I think more people need to be optimistic and creative about opportunities and what they can do to mitigate those factors. When it comes to the family sector, there's going to be a lot of different opinions about that. Yeah, have I seen a change over the past 30 years in the family dynamic from what America considers the social norm? I It's hard for me to say because it's a massive controversy no matter what side you look on. I come from a traditional home, so obviously I have my values because I was very blessed to have great parents, have a happy family life. So those are things that I hold value in because I had a good experience, but not everybody did. So I understand why some people don't believe in that model because they had negative experiences. So it's a bad taste in their mouth. Like that makes sense to me. But what I want to tell them is just because you had a bad experience doesn't mean the system or the model itself is bad. And I think more people should give it a chance and opportunity.
No, totally. You know, we should always be optimistic about the future, but like the most important thing we can do right now, and I would stress this to my audience, is to get financially educated. Like when you
Yes.
have financial education, especially about monetary systems, like how does money work? What is money? What is fiat money? What is gold-backed money? And all of that stuff. That's when we can protect ourselves against anything that is out there. How to do business, what are the mindsets and strategies required to start your own business, how to monetize that which you're passionate about. So that's how, like, we cannot control the world around us, but we can start doing things that is within our vicinity, you know.
Oh, yeah. The more you know about those industries, the more you can protect yourself, the people around you, the more you can help your communities. Because if you understand how finances work at a, small domestic level to a global level, you're going to understand the ins and outs of what you need to do to get the job done.
No, totally. So Tamara, on a different note, I know that you mentioned that your father had like this global humanitarian project, and and then like now you're continuing with it. Can you tell me, the audience, a little bit more about that and the premise of how it got started?
Well, yeah, we'll do a very high level of it right now. There's a lot of details that need to be ironed out as things have changed because my father was involved with a group of individuals about 15 years ago when it originally started. And they wanted to start a global humanitarian effort from housing to land development to cleaning up disaster zones. It was beautiful on so many levels. And he got me involved when I was in my 20s. It came about a lot of heartache and a lot of things kept the project from moving forward. And then later, my dad got cancer and he battled it for about 4 years. And at the very end, the day before he passed away, he looked at me and he said, "Tam, finish it." So he gave me the tiara to take his old business plans and all the projects and everything else. And because there are so many different phases within this monstrosity, and so much has changed economically speaking over the past 10 years that I'm having to recalibrate what is the best step first to get this project going, because you can't start all of them at once. That's not going to happen. I think that was the issue a lot of the time, is they were trying to do too much at one time. So I'm going to take my dad's dying wish and start on the first part, which is a transportation company moving hard assets, um, high value hard assets globally for clients, and letting that be quote unquote the cash cow to get the other projects going, because that will then lead into the avionics aspect of the school for people to learn how to fix. And then we can lease airplanes, then we can send airplanes to disaster zones from a humanitarian aid, then we can build the housing aspects for the employees and the people that we go help. And it folds over. So I feel that I found the right system. Now it's making sure that the structure is set up correctly and getting the right people involved. So for me, that is the biggest thing. And why it really struggled is it didn't have the right people from the beginning. There were a lot of people that didn't want it to succeed. So I only want to be around the people who have the same intention of, we just want to help people and make the world a better, cleaner place.
That is awesome, Tamara. Like I really hope that you succeed in your endeavors, and yeah. So
We
Tamara, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say we will. It's It's not if, it's when.
No, yeah, totally. It's a really amazing mission, and I'm all aboard on this succeeding, you know? Like I know your heart's in the right place and it'll eventually succeed.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So Tamara, how can our audience connect with you and get to know more about you and all of that?
So I would prefer people reach out to me individually right now if they have questions, because I do want to be very particular about who I do share information with, because we do have proprietary technology and information. So I would like to do my due diligence if I have conversations about the project. About me in general, email is always a great way to get a hold of me, and that's at TL Vanderlugt, uh, VANDERLUGT at gmail.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under Tamara Vander Lugt. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me as of right now, to make sure that I can keep track of everything.
Well, Tamara, I'm really grateful that you took the time to do this podcast with us because your expertise is amazing and you're basically an inspiration to a lot of like female entrepreneurs that do want to go into male-dominated fields. And I do hope that in the future you do come back as a guest again for this podcast.
Yes, I'll give you an update when that happens.
Okay, no, yeah, like totally. And I want to conclude this episode by letting my fellow extraordinary Americans know that look, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us, and it's our duty to awaken it and unleash it. Until next time, bye for now. Hey there, everyone. Thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets you free. Also, remember that your purchasing power is being diluted through inflation, and then the practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power by investing in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Also, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.